Hello everyone, this is Sebastiano of CodyHouse.co. In this video, I want to show you how you can create diagonal sections in your website. Just to show you an example, we recently published a new component, the diagonal hero component. And as you can see right here, we have a full width section where the edges are not straight lines, but they are slightly inclined. So we want to do something similar in this tutorial. And as usual, I'm going to use the CodyHouse Framework. So you can go ahead and download the framework on GitHub. I've already downloaded it, so we can go and launch the terminal to get started. We can move into the into the framework folder, and then we can start by running npm install. And then npm run gulp watch. And we are good to go. Now we can just open this into the editor. So first of all, we want to include a hero component. So I don't want to go ahead and create a hero component from scratch. The effect we're going to create, we can consider that effect a variation of the hero component. So we can go back to CodyHouse. We can look for the hero component. Then we can copy the CSS, move back to the framework, and into the style.scss file, right after the globals, we're going to paste this code. And for the moment, I just want to remove this last bit here, which is the part where we import the background images. We can save, and then we can go back to CodyHouse, copy the HTML, go back to our file, and then we can paste the HTML of the component into our file. Now, if we save and go back, so there it is, we have the hero section. Now, just because we cannot really see the edges of this component, we can go back to the body. We can apply some inline style real quick. We can set background equal to, we can use one of the framework variables, color, contrast, lower. Save, go back. Now you can see the edges of the component. Right, so you can pick any hero variation you want, because we have different variation on this component. You can select, for example, center if you want the content in the center. Actually, I want to use I prefer this version, so if I go and just check the code, I can just copy this class here. Because the CSS is already there, we can just apply this variation here, save, and now we have the text in the center. Perfect. Now let's start with the tutorial. So we have, as usual in CSS, different approaches we can use to achieve the same result. We're going to explore a few different approaches. And I'm going to explain to you why I am going to end up using a clip path applied on the before pseudo element of this hero section. Okay, so first of all, let's go back to our code. Let's move into the style.scss and let's create our variation hero diagonal. Then we can go back to the HTML file and we can apply this variation to our element, to our component. Perfect. Now, the easiest approach will be to apply the clip path property directly to the hero diagonal element. So you can write clip path. Now, I'm not going to go into details to explain how the clip path works, because it's not complex, but it comes with a lot of features. So we're just going to focus on the polygon function. So if you write polygon, you have to pass to this function a set of coordinates, let's say. So for example, I'm starting with 0% and 0%. Now I can separate the coordinates with a comma and add other coordinates. So what I'm doing, I'm creating a polygon. The first one of the coordinates is placed on the x-axis. The second one is placed on the y-axis. And we're using a percentage, so it's a relative unit. It's relative to something, and in this case, it's relative to the size of the component itself. So it's relative to the size of the element to which we are applying the clip path, which means what? That 0% and 0% is this point over here. When we move along the x-axis, this is no longer 0% and 0%, obviously, it's 100% and 0%. This point over here is 100%, 100%, and guess what? This point over here is 0%, 100%. So if we want to create exactly the same polygon as the component itself, you can just pass these coordinates I just told you. But then there would be no sense in using the clip path. So the clip path is a property which allows you to clip an element. Clip, which means like creating a mask, removing some parts of the element. So if we set a polygon whose shape is different from the one of the element to which we are applying the clip path, then we end up removing some parts of the element. Just to show you an example, say we want to create the diagonal effect only using the clip path applied to the hero diagonal class. Then we can set, for example, 0, 0. Then we can go over here and set, let's say, 100% and then 10%. So it's no longer 0 over here, but we're moving down a bit. So it's going to be right here. Then we can go ahead and set 100% and 100%. And then the last set of coordinates is going to be 0%, and then we want to move up a little, so it's going to be 90%. Now if we save, now you can see there it is. So we have the effect. The clip path is creating this polygon, and all what is outside this polygon is not visible. So the size of the div is still this one. But these parts, they've just been clipped out. So they're no longer visible. And that's it. End of the tutorial. Well, not really, because if we use this technique, we may end up having some troubles. So we have to give this component a bit of context and see what happens if we have other adjacent components. So for example, I can just go ahead and duplicate this section. So I'm going to add an additional hero section on top of the current one, and then another one at the bottom. Oops. There we go. And then I'm going to remove the hero diagonal class from these two new duplicated components. And save. Now, as you can see, we have some troubles with the background. Because we have clipped the element itself, we can see part of the background, obviously. To make it even clearer, now because I have already created a new theme in my CodyHouse project, I can go to the globals page. I can click colors, and then, yeah, there it is. I have a dark theme. I can just copy the CSS, go back to my project, and then replace the content of the colors.scss file. Now, if I go back to my project, I can apply the data theme here. Data theme dark to the first hero section and to the last one. So this is just to give you an example of something which is more realistic, let's say. So you have a first section with a color background, then you have the section with the diagonal edges, and then you have another section. So you have this problem here. You want to remove this. So one way around this will be to apply negative margins to the component. And as I've said before in other videos, I'm not a fan of applying negative margins in CSS to the main components, to the main blocky components, containers, let's say, of your web page. Well, there is a reason for that. If you go ahead and just apply a negative margin, like for example, just gonna try minus 100 pixels, 0. So as you can see, you have removed the issue with the background, but now when you go into your file, and you have a set of utility classes. For example, we do have a set of utility classes for the vertical spacing and the margin in the CodyHouse framework. So you go ahead and you just apply to this section over here a margin bottom medium, for example, and you save, and nothing really happens. So you have to go and check why this is happening. You have to go into your style.css, and then you realize you cannot really apply any margin utility class to your section because you have already applied a negative margin to this section. So it's not going to work for me because I don't think this is the maintainable approach, let's say. So I want to find something which is easier to work with. So let's scratch this out. There we go. So another approach I've seen in another website is using pseudo elements. So for example, we can set a before pseudo element with the position of absolute. Now, always remember to set content to the pseudo elements. And then in this case, we're going to set also a position relative on the parent. And well, what you can do is you can set top of 0 and left of 0. Then you can go ahead and set a width equal to 100%. So it's equal to the width of the parent, which is in this case the hero diagonal. And then a height of, I don't know, let's go with the 100 pixels. Now we just want to check what's happening. So if we set the background red, you can see that you have created this section over here. Actually, let me switch to RGBA, and then we're going to set a 0.5 value for the opacity. Now that this is done, we can just translate, we can apply transform, translate Y. So we want to go up. So it's going to be a negative value of minus, let's go with a minus 50%. There we go. So we have placed this element here, as you can see. And the transparency helps because you can see where it is in relation to the parent. Okay, so what you can do here, you can apply an additional transformation, which is the skew Y. You can go, for example, for 3 degrees. You can save, and here it is. If we switch the color of this to, let's say, color background, we can use the same color applied to the hero section, you have the effect. So this is working, but we still have an issue. So let's say that we want to apply a background image to this hero section. So you can go ahead. First of all, let me remove a second the margin bottom from here. Now, if you have any kind of background image, so already have one over here, I'm going to paste this into the assets. I'm going to create an EMG folder, and inside this folder, I'm putting this image. Okay. Now, if we go back to the editor and we target the hero diagonal and we set a background of So we want to set the image we just uploaded as the background of the hero section. You can copy the relative path, go ahead and paste it here. This is not gonna work, so we have to nope. So there we go. So here's the problem. There you go. Okay, so we have the image applied to this section, but as you can see already, there is an issue with the before element. So if we do apply a background image to the hero section, there is no way for us to apply the same background image to the before element. Now, even though we go ahead and, for example, we set a no repeat, center, center, and then we set a background size equal to cover, because we want the image to stretch in a smart way to account for the available space. Now we go back, yeah, it's looking better, but at least I haven't found any way to apply the same background image to the before pseudo element so that this is perfectly aligned with the image of the hero section, but just because the sizes are different sizes, so there is no way out of this. Okay, so this technique works if you have flat background colors. If you don't want to apply any background image, then you can use this technique, but it's not going to work if you want to have the option to use a background image. So once again, we're going to remove this part here. I'm not going to remove everything because we are still going to use the before pseudo element for our effect. So what is it that we can actually do and that works? Let me show you. So we can use a different approach. So I'm going to stick with the before pseudo element, okay? And I'm going to set that, once again, going to set a background color equal to GBA red and then 0.5. There we go. But I'm going to change the height equal to 100%. Save. Let's go and check. Now, as you can see, the background is on top of the content, so we can go to the index file and yeah, we have a hero content element that we can target here. We can set a z index value equal to 1, and we need position relative, otherwise the z index value is not going to work. And doing so, we are moving the content up once again. So we're using the pseudo element to set the background color of the entire hero section. Now, because the width and height of the pseudo elements are equal to 100%, if you change the size of the hero section, this is going to, the size of the pseudo element is going to adapt. It's going to always be the same size of the hero section. So here I can just set background color equal to transparent, because I don't need the background color applied to the hero section anymore. We're going to use, once again, the before pseudo element. Okay, now we're going to use the clip path, but we're not going to apply the clip path to the hero section. We're going to apply the clip path, as you can guess, on the before pseudo element. So, because I'm going to change the size of the pseudo element, I want to make sure this effect is visible only in the browsers that support the clip path. Okay, so I'm going to write supports. We can enter here clip path, and we can set any value we want. I'm going to set none. Now all the codes that I'm going to put in here is going to be visible only in the browsers that support the clip path property. So in those browsers, we can target the before pseudo element of the hero diagonal element. and we want to change the size. We want the size to be slightly bigger than the one of the hero diagonal element. So I'm going to set the height equal to, oops, I'm going to use the calc function. It's going to be 100% plus. Let's set a 100 pixel of offset. Okay. Now, if you save, then you can see in the background what's happening. I'm going to move up the background image a little by half the offset size. So it's going to be minus 50 pixel, the top value. And as you can see now, we have centered vertically the pseudo element, and it's taller than the parent. And now we're going to apply the clip path, always the polygon function, to this element. Now you remember how the polygon function works, I'm sure. So we want to create the diagonal effect. So basically we want the points of the polygon to be this one here, and then go down here, and then should be this one over here, and then go up here. So we have to set 0%, 0%, then 100%, and then 50 pixels, because you know this size here is 50 pixels. Then it's going to be 100%, 100%, and finally 0%. And here you can use a calc function to set 100% minus 50 pixel. Then you can hit save. Oops. And it's missing a parenthesis. Okay. Now if you save, there you have it. You have created the diagonal edges. You can switch the background back to, let me just comment this one. I'm going to set this equal to variable color background. And there you go. Now if I resize the window, there you can see the diagonal edges are preserved at all media queries, as it should be. And unlike the first approach, there is no issue with the background here. We haven't applied any negative margin to this element. And guess what? We can also apply a background image. In this case, you have to apply the background image to the before pseudo element. Actually, let me apply this image for you. So it's going to be background, and then once again, let's copy the relative path. Can paste it here. Remove it. Then oops. Repeat, center, center, and then background sides, cover. Now, as you can see, the background is clipped along with the pseudo element. So it works. Now, if you want to be really thorough and you want to make this component even easier to modify in the future, you can actually set a variable. For example, we can call this variable diagonal hero offset equal to 50 pixel. Then we can go over here and we can replace these values. For example, this one is equal to the variable we've just created multiplied by 2. So this is a negative value, so we can apply calc, the variable we just created multiplied by minus 1. This is, me copy this, and we can replace this with the variable. And we can replace this with the variable as well. Now, if we go ahead and save, and we check this one, so nothing really changes. But if we go back to this component after a while and we realize we want to change the offset, Now we can just enter a value here. For example, we want to increase the offset to 100 pixel. And as you can see, now we have a different offset. So this height here is no longer 50 pixels, but it's equal to 100 pixels. So we are increasing the degree, let's say, of this diagonal section. And that's all. So I think we have you have all the information you need to go ahead and create the diagonal sections in your websites. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you next time.